Good morning, preppers. Welcome to Goshen Prepping. Time is short. And we do say this often, that time is short. And it is short indeed, especially in the grand scheme of things. But I have people say, quite often, mind you, that, oh, it's too late to start prepping. Of course it's not too late to start prepping. You can still buy stuff from Walmart, can't you? Corned beef hash still available. Pick up what you can and continue to push your preps until things hit the fan. Now, as far as things hitting the fan, I've been asked, and I often put my input in, when do I think it's going to happen? I think we're looking at shortages and even more price increases like inflation this fall. Now, I had somebody say, see, you said it was going to happen this fall, and it hasn't happened. Give me a break. Fall's like, what, 3 days ago? We're barely into fall. Fall doesn't mean at the very beginning of fall, but we're talking about not necessarily the season, we're talking about the harvest. And that's what I've mentioned many times, is because the harvests coming in are going to be extremely limited because of lack of fertilizer, because of diesel prices up, etc. So we're going to start seeing, in my opinion, nobody knows for sure, but I think we're looking at probably in the next few months, we'll start seeing even more shortages and problems at the grocery store. Now, when things collapse, again, my opinion, nobody has a crystal ball. All we can do look at is history, and when we actually match up the graphs and such, I think we're probably looking at December, maybe January, maybe even February, a huge collapse. Now, I'm not going to say we're going to have a huge collapse and going back to an agrarian society, and I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that we're actually going to see a huge crash in the stock market. The economy is going to collapse, and we're going to have major problems leading to a greater depression than we had before. Now, the greater depression, just like the Great Depression, will have a lot of the same earmark similarities, and I want to point some of those out to you in this video. And I'm thinking we're probably in the springtime, come summer, greater depression, and don't even want to think about this, catastrophically leading to another major war. So nobody knows. We're preparing for it. You know what? You get extra corned beef hash and nothing happens. You have some extra food on hand. That's great. And as the people, evacuees in Florida will tell you, having those things on hand anyway for natural disasters, whatever the case may be, is always smart. So it's smart to prep. It's smart to stockpile because you know what? We don't live in a world where everything is perfect. We don't live in this communist utopia we can all depend on. I say that tongue in cheek, of course. All right, so let's go ahead and go through a couple articles I want to show you on here. This first one, the Fed says, you know, this is going to hurt, but it matters who feels the pain. Because the Fed is saying we're in trouble. And when the Fed says we're in trouble, considering there's a lot of orchestration happening there, I think you better listen. Let's see, there's a couple things I want to point out in this. The Fed is now forecasting a meaningful rise in unemployment. All right, that's the first thing I want to point out over the next year as it pushes interest rates. Now, we are definitely talking about the interest rates going up. And they're doing this to try to curb inflation. Anytime inflation hits, they raise the interest rates, which basically stagnates the economy and chokes us. It makes it more difficult to do anything. You want to get a car loan, you're going to pay more on the interest rate, of course, if you don't pay cash. Home loan, we already see the interest rates going up. So as the interest rates are going up because of the Feds, it makes it so people are not buying so much. It's going to cut down on inflation, in theory. By the way, did you know the Federal Reserve admitted, when they did the same thing, by the way, in 1929 into the 30s, they admitted they didn't know enough and they actually caused the Great Depression. Did you know that? I mean, listen, articles-wise, is it true or not? It's really difficult to say because they like to keep things a little bit close to their chest. They don't like to put out that they actually made mistakes. But the analysts I've heard said that the Federal Reserve, they admitted they actually pushed things too much, leading to the Great Depression. I mean, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. I think in that particular case, maybe they planned on doing that in the first place to try to reset things back to normal, because we are talking about the Great Reset people talk about all the time. And so therefore they may, do it again. But the interest rates are obviously going up, and that is problematic for us. Not simply just trying to cut down inflation, but trying to make it so we can live. Let's see. We have to get inflation behind us. Yeah, absolutely. And I wish there were a painless way to do that, but you know what? There isn't. All right, so it goes into more projections. Look at this. Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. Morgan Stanley warns of something worse than a normal recession. I love that term. Oh, this recession, this is normal. And obviously that's not what he meant. He simply means, we're going to a recession, which does happen on occasion. No, something worse than what you would typically see as far as a recession goes is coming. And what is that thing? I think is a Great Depression, a greater depression. Right here, we think it's unavoidable. To avoid an earning recession, that's what matters for stocks. Of course, we're really talking about stock markets and stuff, the situation with that. It talks about the economic situation. Everything's all interrelated. It's all basically, in my opinion, a house of cards. Because when we see all these things happening between like the diesel prices and fertilizer and low harvest and unemployment increasing and inflation going up and the federal, all this stuff, it's all interconnected. And it's difficult to have all these things happening in the last 2.5 years to not conclude to like, you know what, everything's going to be fine. No, you can't conclude that. Because, I mean, we may actually see things at this point starting getting better and we have a light at the end of the tunnel. But honestly, I think that light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming. You need to get ready because you're about to get squashed. That's what I think is happening. Because I think even the analysts, that's what we're looking at in this article, are saying that, oh, you know what? It's all interrelated, and you know it's really difficult to see all this basically turning to be something better. New Great Depression is likely in 2023, analysts say. Let's see, life as we know it is about to change dramatically as the world is plunged into a far-reaching economic depression. That's exactly what I've been saying. Now, this kind of makes me giggle. Unlike the Great Depression of the 30s, this will be a full-scale globalized depression. Huh? What are we talking about? Because the depression that happened in the 30s was a full-scale global depression too. I mean, maybe I'm seeing it differently. Maybe you have more insight on this, but the United States by far was not the only country plunged into depression in the 30s, especially for the fact that we actually had an interconnection with the top of the world order at that time. When our economies go down, the world economy goes down. But I think they're saying this is going to be far-reaching, and it's not simply going to affect just the first world countries, but third world countries too. And the UN's been saying the same thing. And you know how I love to listen to the UN and believe everything they say. But they're talking about as far as famine in the third world countries are going to get really, really, really bad. And I think that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a greater depression for the fact that things have changed so much since the first depression. It's going to be difficult in more ways than we know of. Even though we still have internet and stuff, there seems to be an increase in violence and problems in our modern times. It seems to be. And when we actually start seeing people with depression get hungry, back then they would go around in hobo camps and try to fend for themselves. Now we're looking at people getting violent. You know, that's the kind of stuff that kind of frightens me, and I definitely want to be aware of for you and my family too. It's a pretty dystopian message, but we're seeing it all across the charts. There it is again. We're looking at not just one thing, but a whole bunch of stuff. It's going to be brutal on any form of leverage, and it's going to be an impoverished event generally for the middle classes. Yep, definitely. And this is the right, I love this sentence right here. It's a crisis, he says, it's been building. It's like a slow motion car crash through decades of ever increasing money issuance. Exactly right. We've been seeing it coming, and it seems like even though we're there right now, it does seem to be like a slow motion car crash, and we happen to be the dummies in the seat who's about to get squashed. All right, another one that coincides with it too. Feds predict big slowdown in the economy and rising unemployment as it battles inflation. We don't have to go through much of this article, but it simply talks about as the Feds are increasing the interest rates, we're going to see a drastic pain in Americans because of this with rising layoffs and unemployment. Now, why am I pointing this out specifically? Because that's exactly what happened with the Great Depression. They raised the interest rates to curb the inflation. Stock market was doing amazingly well. They pushed the inflation so much that it crashed the markets, led to massive layoffs and unemployment. And we're already seeing that happening now. Biden is saying, oh, no, this is good. We actually have a lot of people increasing jobs. And that may be true, but the increasing in jobs were because people lost so many jobs because of COVID anyway. You know, if you're already at the bottom, the only place you can go is up. But we were not where we were before, not even close. And if we're actually looking at a looming depression, the unemployment's going to go way high. And we're about to see the United States and first world countries and third world countries all plummeting together. So definitely, from what I see, from what I read, what the analysts are saying, we're definitely heading for some bad times. And we have not hit that yet. Even if it doesn't happen this fall or in the spring, we have some time. You can still go shop at Walmart. And even though I've seen in videos, I try to let you know when I see shortages, even there are shortages, there's still often things to buy. It is not too late to prep. So do what you can. You know, I always say don't go into debt. Don't try to spend, you need to try to get out of debt if possible, but you need to be smart about this. And instead of actually spending money on whatever, maybe you have a little bit extravagances you go into, curb those for now. put it into buying some food. Canned food is always your best friend. And if you are not already doing so, you really need to get going with these preps. Okay, we're in this together. And as far as Goshen prepping goes, we are definitely here to try to work with you and us too, because we're definitely open to listen to situations as well. We're in this together as a community to try to get through this, because you know what? We can get through this. There is hope, but you need to be smart about this. And so do we. We need to continuously prep and be ready for what's coming, which does not sound good. It sounds very dismal. Okay, thanks for watching.